What your birthday month says about your spirit animal will shock you. Shi Heng Yi motivation. What if your birth wasn't random? What if the moment you entered this world, the exact breath you took in that first light, was the unlocking of a deeper journey? A journey seeded long before you were born. One is carried not just in your DNA, but also in your soul's memory. Because within you there is a vibration, a quiet but ancient energy that doesn't shout but resonates. A pattern of being, a rhythm of becoming, and your birth month, it's not just a date, it's a symbol, a spiritual compass. A mirror reflecting the animal essence that's been walking with your soul from the beginning, not a mascot, not a superstition, but an archetype, a spirit encoded into your inner landscape. This isn't about horoscopes or fortune telling, it's about remembrance, because deep down your soul already knows. The animal isn't out there waiting to be found, it's already moving within you, guiding your instincts, shaping your fears, sharpening your intuition, fueling your compassion, guarding your truth. So what if you stopped looking outward for answers and started listening inward for echoes? This journey we're about to take isn't just a video, it's a mirror, a map, a gentle uncovering of who you've always been and who you're still becoming, because no one else walks your path. And the spirit you carry, it's sacred. Let's begin. January, Snow Leopard. The silent pathwalker, a soul born for the snow-capped heights. A kind of person never quite fits into the crowd, not because they don't belong, but because they were never meant to follow. If you were born in January, you might have always felt this quiet dissonance with the world around you. You're not lost, you're walking a different trail, one that doesn't call attention to itself. One that runs high above the noise, like a narrow ledge winding along a frozen mountainside. You don't move quickly to speak, you don't feel the need to fill silences. Instead, you listen, you observe. And when you finally do speak, people tend to lean in, not because you're loud, but because your words carry something weightier, something earned. The snow leopard is your spirit mirror, not because it's beautiful or rare, though it is, but because of the way it survives and thrives in solitude. It roams the harshest, most desolate terrain not with force, but with quiet precision. It doesn't announce its arrival, it simply is, and that's you. You are the kind of person whose power doesn't need validation, whose purpose doesn't demand applause. You've likely learned early on that peace doesn't come from comfort but clarity. While others chase distractions, you search for meaning. And while the world pushes for louder, faster, more, your instinct is to slow down and go deeper. You know that the truths worth finding never shout, they whisper in stillness. You are destined to walk a path many cannot see, let alone follow. A certain calmness about you unsettles people who live in chaos. It's not a void, it's presence. Measured, intentional, observant, and it's in that stillness that your greatest strength resides. Stillness reveals what chaos conceals. You see through the noise, not above it, but within it, like someone who's memorized the rhythm of storms and learned to find the eye. February, Crane. The soul of balance, a presence that breathes peace. Some people walk into a room and change the energy, not with volume, drama, or presence. If you were born in February, you may not always notice this effect yourself. You don't seek to command attention, but somehow the storm quiets when you enter. The noise softens, people exhale. You bring stillness not as something forced, but as something you simply are. The crane is your spirit mirror, graceful, measured. A creature that moves not for show, but with purpose. Every motion is infused with intention, one step at a time. The crane doesn't rush, it doesn't flinch. It knows that every moment has its own pace and trusts that rhythm. And so do you. You've likely never enjoyed chaos, not because it overwhelms you, but because it doesn't make sense to your soul. It's not your language. While others are pulled between extremes, you're drawn to the in-between, the quiet middle space where meaning grows. You embody the middle way, not about extremes, but equilibrium. You are the one people turn to when they don't know who else to ask. The one who listens, not to respond, but to understand. You don't push advice, you offer presence. You don't force outcomes, you create space for others to unfold. Your strength doesn't roar, it stands unwavering. Your essence is rooted in inner harmony. And because of that, you've probably been underestimated and mistaken for passive. Misread as indecisive, but they don't see the quiet fire behind your calm eyes, the unwavering clarity that keeps you anchored when others drift. They don't realize that true strength is often soft, and yours is the kind that doesn't need to announce itself to be felt. You've lived your life sensing more than you say, reading between the lines, picking up what's unspoken, and that's your gift. You catch what others miss. You can feel the tension beneath someone's smile, the sadness under someone's silence. You don't need facts to understand feelings. You were born with that intuition. And because you feel deeply, you often carry more than your pain. You absorb, you witness, and sometimes, without realizing it, you become the emotional anchor for people who didn't even ask for it. Not out of obligation, but because that's who you are, a bridge people instinctively walk across on their way back to themselves. You are the quiet strength in a friend's hardest moment, the grounding voice in a crisis. The one who sees the bigger picture when everyone else is stuck in reaction. And even though it can be exhausting, you continue to show up over and over again, not for recognition, but because it's who you are. Your presence is not a performance, it's a prayer. If the snow leopard climbs alone, the crane glides between worlds. You know how to hold contrast, to be calm in urgency, steady in movement, grounded in transformation. You live with both feet in the now, yet somehow always seem to sense the larger arc of things. There's something timeless in you, as if you've carried lessons from lives before this one. People feel it, even if they can't explain it. They trust you not because of what you say, but because of what they think when they're near you: safety, stillness, space. And if you've ever wondered why you seem to attract people in pain, people in transition, people searching, it's because your presence says, you can rest here. You're safe, you're seen. You are that rare reminder that peace isn't passive, it's powerful. You don't need to dominate to lead. You don't need to rush to be effective. You don't need to shout to be heard. You simply show up fully and completely, and let your being do what it always does. Bring harmony to the places where it's been lost, and light to the places people forgot how to look. March the tiger, the guardian of truth, a warrior wrapped in compassion. You were never the type to look away. Even when the world taught you to stay quiet, keep it safe, and follow the script, you couldn't. Not because you wanted to rebel, but because something inside you refused to let injustice pass unnoticed. If you were born in March, that something isn't rebellion, it's purpose. It's a calling deeper than your ego, louder than fear. Your spirit is mirrored in the tiger, not just the symbol of strength, but of sacred action. In ancient wisdom, the tiger is not a predator, but a protector, not an aggressor, but a guardian. It doesn't seek chaos, but will walk into fire if that's what truth demands. And so will you. From a young age, you likely noticed how wrong things affect you more than they seem to influence others. When someone's bullied, when a voice is silenced, when someone weaker is taken advantage of, you feel it like a wound to your soul. You don't just sympathize, you move, you step in, you act. Because standing by never felt like an option for you. You are a spiritual warrior, a guardian of light cloaked in fire. But understand that fire, it isn't rage for the sake of noise. It's sacred flame, the kind that burns illusions, not bridges. The kind that illuminates rather than consumes. You have a way of turning fury into focus, of transforming outrage into action. You alchemize raw emotion into purposeful action. Others may call it too intense, but you know what that intensity is. It's heart, it's devotion. You don't fight to win, you fight because you care. You speak not to argue, but to defend what matters. The truth is, you have likely faced more than your fair share of hardship. Life, for you, hasn't always been gentle. You've had to learn resilience through direct experience, not theory. And that's exactly what gives your strength its depth. You're not just powerful, you're forged. You've been through fires that could have burned you down, but they refined you instead. You've walked through betrayal, loss, disillusionment. And every time you could have chosen bitterness, you chose growth. Every scar is a page in your story, not a wound to hide, but wisdom earned. And because of this, others feel safe around you, not because you're soft, but because you're solid. They know that if you're in the room, they're protected. They know that it won't be ignored if you care about something. You allow people to stand taller, speak louder, and love harder. You lead with conviction, not control. You're the one who reminds people that boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to self-respect. That power, when held with compassion, becomes liberation. The tiger walks through the jungle gracefully, not to be feared, but to be respected. And you carry that same energy. Even your silence holds weight. Even your stillness hums with potential. People feel it, that quiet readiness, that spiritual grit, that I will not let this go unnoticed, energy that only someone who's walked through fire can embody. You're not here to follow, you're here to forge, to carve paths where there were none, to hold space for change, even when it's uncomfortable. You carry fire, but it's the kind that warms those around you and burns only the things that no longer serve. And perhaps most powerfully, you remind others that compassion is not weakness, that love can be fierce, that kindness can roar, because you are not just brave, you are principled. You are not just strong, you are heart strong. And in a world that often confuses apathy with peace, you are proof that the soul's fire is still burning. April elephant, the soul's ancient memory, a silent guardian through presence. Some people carry a sense of gravity about them. They don't need to speak to be heard. They don't rush to prove themselves because who they are speaks louder than anything they say. If you were born in April, you are likely one of those people, the kind of person others lean on, especially when the ground feels unsteady. You are the still point in a spinning world. The presence of others returns to when they've forgotten who they are. Your spirit reflects the elephant, not merely because of its size or power, but because of its memory, wisdom, and unwavering dignity. Elephants stroll not because they are weak, but because they carry the weight of something sacred, lineage, truth, and awareness that stretches far beyond a lifetime. There is an ancient knowing in you, a sense that you've lived through this before, not in the way of déjà vu, but in how your soul recognizes life's deeper rhythms. You feel things that haven't been said. You understand lessons that others haven't yet learned. You just know. It's not uncommon for people to seek you out when they're falling apart. Not because you always have the answers, but because you don't pretend to. Because your presence alone feels like an answer, like something steady they can hold on to when everything else is slipping through their hands. You are a pillar in the lives of others. You don't need to dominate conversations to lead them. You don't chase attention. You don't raise your voice. And still, people listen because your energy carries weight. Because when you speak, it's with intention. You don't waste words. You don't mask truth with sugar. There's a slow-burning strength in you that doesn't need to be explained. It's the kind of strength that holds the room during the storm. That stays behind to clean up what others abandon. That forgives without forgetting because your compassion doesn't erase your discernment. You lead not with force, but with example. Quietly, consistently, and without needing applause. You show up. You stay, you care, and because of that you may find yourself carrying more than most, not out of choice but because you can, because you've always been able to. And while the world celebrates flashier heroes, you remain the silent backbone, the grounding force behind the scenes, the one who remembers what truly matters. But even strength like yours has its limits. So let this also be a reminder, just because you can carry more doesn't mean you always should. Your soul too deserves rest, your heart too deserves gentleness, and your energy. It's sacred, protect it the way you protect others. You move through life with a sense of purpose that's never rushed. You understand that not everything needs to be immediate, that sometimes patience is the most profound form of love. In its quiet way, that endurance is one of the most extraordinary acts of devotion. You aren't here to impress, you're here to impact, and that you do with your calm, depth, and refusal to bend under pressure. You are a living reminder that authentic leadership requires no crown, only consistency. That true wisdom doesn't always shout, it walks slowly and steadily toward what's real. You are the memory keeper, the guide. The soul who holds space for the broken to mend, for the lost to return, and for the truth to rise. And the beautiful thing is you don't even realize how powerful that is, because power to you was never the goal, presence was. And that is precisely why you're the kind of person the world can't afford to lose. My dear, compassion is strength and gentleness, courage. You may not be the loudest voice in the room. You may not stand in the spotlight, drawing attention with bold declarations or grand displays. But if you were born in May, you carry something far more potent than performance. You have presence, the kind that makes people feel seen without needing to explain themselves, the type that heals without needing to fix. You move through the world like a forest breeze, quiet but undeniable, soft but unforgettable. Your spirit mirrors that of the deer, not because you are fragile, but because you are alert, aware, and deeply attuned to the heartbeats of those around you. You don't just hear words, you feel intentions. You don't just notice pain, you hold it gently like it matters. Because to you it does. Your healing light is sacred and must be honored. You've always been sensitive, but that's not a flaw. It's a superpower in a world that too often teaches us to harden. You feel deeply, which means you hurt deeply too. And yet, even in the face of that hurt, you remain open. That is spiritual courage. That is what sets you apart. You may find that others are drawn to you when they're lost. They won't always know why, but something about you feels like safety, like understanding, like a soft place to land. And it's because you embody more than just kindness. You embody karuna, compassion in action. You don't just wish people well, you show up for them. You remember the small things. You hold space without trying to fix or control. You ask questions no one else thinks to ask. You listen not with judgment, but with your whole being. You don't need to rescue anyone, you simply remind them of their light, often when they've forgotten it. And because of this, you sometimes carry more than your share. You absorb the unspoken grief of the world. You weigh others' burdens without even realizing it. That's the shadow side of your gift. But even in that exhaustion, you find a way to offer calm, the quiet presence that makes everything feel a little more bearable. You know how to move gently through chaos, to bring warmth into cold places, to sit with discomfort without fleeing from it. And though the world may see you as delicate, your gentleness is not weakness, it's resilience. It's your decision every single day to choose love over fear, to choose empathy over indifference, to choose softness when the world gives you every reason not to. There's a particular kind of strength in your spirit, the kind that doesn't need armor, the type that heals through connection, the kind that doesn't demand change but inspires it by example. You've likely found that you don't need many words to make a difference. A touch, a look, a shared silence, these are your tools. And they're powerful because they come from a real place. They come from a soul that's walked with sorrow and still chooses joy. A soul that knows what it means to suffer and what it means to stand back up anyway, open-hearted and still willing to love. You teach others that it's okay to feel, that vulnerability is not a liability, it's the path to truth, that the world doesn't need more armor, it needs more authenticity, and you offer that simply by being. So if you've ever been told you're too sensitive, let this be your reminder. Your sensitivity is your strength. It's what makes you the healer, the connector, the soul others return to when they've forgotten their softness. You are not here to conquer. You are here to comfort. You are not here to impress. You are here to illuminate, and you do, all without needing to try. Because when someone sits in your presence, they feel something shift, not because you fixed them, but because you believed they were already whole. June Monk, the explorer of mind, turning chaos into clarity. If you were born in June, your mind likely never sits still. It's a wildfire of thought, a constant motion of questions, ideas, possibilities. You notice everything. You think fast, and often feel tense between excitement and overwhelm. People may have told you to slow down, focus, and pick one path, but they usually miss this. Your speed isn't a flaw, it's a force. When directed with intention, it becomes genius. Your spirit is mirrored in the monkey, not the caricature of mischief, but the sacred figure in ancient stories, revered for its cleverness, insight, and ability to leap between the seen and unseen. In Buddhist tradition, the monkey represents the untamed mind and the incredible potential within that mind when mastered. Your path is to transform restless energy into focused presence. That journey isn't easy. Your curiosity pulls you in 100 directions. You are hungry to know, experience, create, and understand. You aren't satisfied with surface-level truths. You dig, you challenge. You explore the edges of things, always wondering what lies just beyond. And in that constant seeking, you've probably felt moments of frustration, like you're drowning in your thoughts. Like your energy, while electric, sometimes turns against you, spinning you in circles. But this is the spiritual edge you walk. Because when you learn to channel that current, when your curiosity finds grounding, something remarkable happens. Your curiosity becomes a gateway to wisdom, not the kind of wisdom found in books, but the living kind. The kind that's born from connection, creativity, and a deep understanding of human nature. You see patterns where others see noise. You turn contradictions into insight. You make people laugh not to avoid depth, but to sneak it in joyfully. Because humor is one of your gifts, too. You lighten heavy rooms. You say what others are afraid to say, but with a smile that disarms. You see the absurdity in things, but you don't stay there. You lift others out of their spirals, not by fixing them, but by reminding them to play, imagine, and think differently. You have a trickster energy to deceive, but to reveal, to flip perspectives, to challenge assumptions. You aren't here to follow the rules unthinkingly. You're here to ask why. And in doing so, you crack open possibilities others couldn't see. And yet behind all that movement, there is depth. You're not just a thinker, you're a feeler. Beneath your quick wit is a tender heart, one who feels the chaos of the world a little too much. One that sometimes wants to turn the noise off and just breathe. That's why mindfulness matters so much for you, not as a trend, but as a lifeline. Stillness isn't your default, but it's your medicine. When you remember to pause, breathe, and come back to the moment, you access something rare. A clarity that cuts through the noise, a wisdom that surprises even you. And from that place, your creativity doesn't scatter, it lands, it builds. It changes things. You are meant to create, connect, question, and teach others that their mind isn't the enemy. It's a tool, a bridge, a mirror. When directed with presence, it becomes a source of liberation. So if you've ever been called too much, remember, you're not. You're full of life, thought, color, ideas, and wonder. Your gift is not in quieting who you are, refining, grounding, and sharing it with intention. Because when someone like you finds stillness, not in silence, but in centered awareness, you don't just entertain, you enlighten. You are proof that when loved and listened to, the mind becomes a source of light, not distraction. And that joy, when rooted in truth, becomes a path to awakening. July Phoenix, reborn from the ashes, a heart forged in fire. If you were born in July, life hasn't just handed you change, it's carved you with it, not gently, not softly, but through fire. Through loss, upheaval, and transformation that breaks open everything you thought you were, only to reveal something more luminous. You are the phoenix, not the myth, but the meaning. You don't just go through change, you become it. You do not simply survive change, you are transformed by it. Most people fear endings, but not you. Somewhere along the way, whether by choice or fate, you learn to sit in the ashes, to hold space for what had to burn. To watch versions of yourself disintegrate so that something more honest could rise in their place. And that rise, it's not cinematic, it's sacred. Because when the fire comes, and it always does, you don't run. You don't pretend it isn't happening. You walk straight into it, letting go of what no longer serves, surrendering identities that once felt safe but now feel small. It's not easy, it's never easy, but it's honest. And it's the path that has shaped your soul. Destruction can be the beginning of something beautiful. You've probably lost things you never thought you could live without, and somehow you're still here, wiser, sharper, softer in all the right ways. You've come back from heartbreak, disappointment, and failure. And each time you rose not despite what you went through, but because of it. There is a strength in you that cannot be explained and only witnessed. It's in the way you show up after the storm, in the quiet resolve behind your eyes. You comfort others going through their collapse because you know that space all too well and you've made peace with it. Your fire is not chaos, it's clarity. When you love, it's with depth. When you let go, it's with dignity. And when you change, it's with complete surrender. You don't cling to what must end. You honor it, then release it because you understand that transformation requires loss. And that loss, while painful, is not the enemy, it's the gatekeeper of growth. People are drawn to you because your life is proof. We are not defined by what breaks us, but by how we rise after. You give hope to those in the dark. You show them there's life after endings. That healing isn't a return to who you were, it's the becoming of who you were meant to be. And perhaps most sacred of all, you don't hold bitterness, you hold grace. You don't carry a chip on your shoulder, you have wisdom in your bones. You teach through embodiment, through showing up fully even when it hurts, through letting your vulnerability be visible, through saying, yes, I've burned, but I've also been reborn. Your life is a living ritual of renewal. It is a testament to the truth that transformation isn't neat but divine, and your path is not linear, it spirals. With every rise, you become more of yourself. So if the world ever tells you you've changed too much, smile gently, because the truth is you're supposed to. You are not here to stay the same. You are here to evolve, to shed, to rise, again and again. And in doing so, you permit others to rise, too. August Lion, the awakening roar leading with truth and compassion. If you were born in August, you were never meant to blend in. Your spirit is bold, not for attention, but for purpose. You are the lion not for the roar alone, but for what that roar represents: courage, clarity, and a call to higher truth. You don't seek control over others. You don't crave thrones or crowns. Because leadership for you was never about being above, it was about standing beside. You don't teach through lectures. You teach by being, embodying what it means to live from conviction, heart, and values that don't shift with the wind. Your roar is a proclamation of truth that awakens others. Something about your presence commands attention, not through ego, but through energy. People notice when you enter the room, not because you try to be noticed, but because authenticity has a frequency. And you live at that frequency. Your fire doesn't consume, it illuminates. You're the one people look to when lost, not because you have all the answers, but because your path is lit by integrity. You don't need to shout to be heard. But when you do speak, the room listens, because your words aren't about proving, they're about moving, and moving hearts, moving minds, moving people toward their higher self. You've likely been misunderstood as too intense or too much. But in truth, you're simply unwilling to live small. You don't play games, you don't say what's easy, you say what's needed. because you see not just what is, but also what could be. You see potential and you call it out of people. Your spirit inspires others not to follow, but to rise. That's the beauty of your power. It doesn't create followers, it creates leaders. You don't hold your light over others. You shine it forward, showing the way and inviting everyone to stand beside you, not behind. Your life says this is what it looks like to be free. And that freedom awakens something ancient in those who witness it. But even in your strength, there is softness, a wide-open heart that feels everything. A loyalty that runs so deep, it aches when others are hurting. You don't just protect ideas, you protect people, especially those who can't defend themselves. Your sense of justice is fierce. You can't stand dishonesty, cruelty, or power used recklessly, and when faced with it, you rise not in anger but in presence. Because you understand that authentic leadership doesn't shout others down, it lifts others. It listens, it includes. It creates space for all voices, especially the quiet ones. And yes, your path is heavy at times, because being the one others rely on isn't easy. Because the weight of being the strong one can be worn on the soul, but you keep going. You rest when you need to, but you don't quit. Because deep down, you know your life matters, your actions matter, the way you carry yourself, it echoes. You are the lion, not in myth, but in meaning. Your roar is not noise, it's a call to truth. A call to rise, a call to live with courage and compassion together, so lead. Not because the world tells you to, but because your soul remembers how. And in that remembering, you permit others to do the same. September Owl, the silent seer, eyes that pierce the illusion. If you were born in September, you have always sensed more than what meets the eye. You move through the world quietly, thoughtfully, often unnoticed, but rarely unaware. While others are distracted by surface-level noise, you're tuned to the frequencies beneath. The unspoken words, the deeper motives, the truths no one wants to say aloud. You don't just see the world, you read it. You see what lies hidden beneath the surface of ordinary reality. Like the owl, your gift is perception, but not the kind that craves credit. Yours is a seeing that doesn't need to be seen. It lives in the margins, the moments in between, and the truths others overlook. You dwell in those liminal spaces between thought and intuition, sound and silence, light and shadow, and that's where your wisdom lives. You are a seer, a silent guide through life's illusions. You don't chase answers, you wait for them to reveal themselves. You don't shout what you know, you let it unfold in others when they're ready. Your intuition is less like a voice and more like a knowing, a compass that doesn't point north but inward. You've likely always felt a little different, not disconnected but distant, not detached but discerning. You don't get swept up in trends or crowds. You prefer the quiet corners where reflection has room to breathe. It's not that you don't like people. You feel everything and have learned to be careful with your energy. Because for someone like you, presence is sacred. There's a calm authority to you, a groundedness that others instinctively trust. People often come to you with their confusion, doubts, tangled thoughts because you help them untangle them without even trying. Sometimes just being in your presence makes them feel clearer, lighter, seen. You don't advise a guru. You ask the question that makes someone realize they already knew the answer. You hold up a mirror, but not to reflect their flaws. To remind them of who they are underneath the noise. And while your wisdom runs deep, your humility runs deeper. You don't need to prove what you know. You don't wear your insight like a crown, you wear it like a lantern. One that lights the way but never demands to be followed. There is something ancient about your soul, not in essence. It is as if your spirit has wandered through many lifetimes, collecting fragments of truth and piecing them into a more profound clarity. You don't just believe in magic, you live in it, in the pauses, in the moments that feel too aligned to be a coincidence. Yet for all your depth, you never lose touch with the present. You aren't a dreamer who floats, you're an anchor. Someone who brings insight down to earth, who sees clearly but walks gently, who navigates complexity with grace. You teach us that not all wisdom speaks, some simply see. And that in a world addicted to noise, silence is a superpower. So continue to walk between the seen and unseen. Keep trusting that still, soft voice inside that's never led you wrong. Because in your quiet clarity, you don't find your way, you help others find theirs too. October Wolf, the soul of the pack holding the fire in solitude. If you were born in October, you were gifted with a spirit that instinctively understands the dance between belonging and becoming. You move through life with an innate ability to hold space for others, fiercely, loyally, but you also know when to step back and disappear into your silence to keep your inner fire alive. You are both a guardian and a seeker, the tribe and the lone trail. You embody loyalty guided by intuition, not blind obedience. You've always known that loyalty is not about saying yes to everything. It's about listening deeply and feeling what's right, standing for something greater than yourself, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's problematic. You know when to stay, when to fight, and when to walk alone. Like the wolf, your sense of community runs deep, but so does your need for solitude. That balance isn't easy. You often feel the pull of the pack, the need to protect, contribute, and be present for those you love. But a whisper inside you also needs quiet, space, distance, not to escape, but to remember. You dance between solitude and service. When you're with others, you give your all. You're the one they count on, the one they look to when things fall apart. You listen not just with your ears, but with your entire being. You catch what's not being said. You sense shifts in energy, in tone, in truth. You are the ethical compass in rooms where people lose their way, and yet you are never lost in the crowd. You never forget your individuality, your integrity, that inner landscape only you know how to navigate. You've probably been told you're too intense, too serious, or even too private. But people don't always realize that your silence isn't absence, it's protection, it's discernment. It's how you process the world so you can return to it clearer, wiser, stronger. You carry the sacred responsibility of holding space for the collective and the self. You feel the weight of others' emotions and a room's unspoken needs. But you've learned, sometimes the hard way, that your well must be complete before you can pour into others. And when you do show up, you do so with an energy that speaks of trust, of reliability, of "I've got you" in its purest form. You don't abandon, you don't betray. You stand beside people in their darkness, not to fix them, but to remind them they aren't alone. There's a kind of quiet heroism in the way you move. You don't need to be in charge to lead. You don't need to shout to be heard. Your strength is grounded, rooted. It comes from knowing who you are, what you believe, and what truly matters. In spiritual terms, you are a keeper of moral fire. A soul who safeguards integrity not through rules but through wisdom, not through domination but through presence. So when you walk ahead, others follow, not because you demand it, but because your path is lit with meaning. You are the wolf, the sacred protector of the pack, the quiet flame that never flickers even when the world grows cold, the one who knows how to serve without losing themselves. And in doing so, you remind us that authentic leadership lives at the intersection of heart and instinct. November, Cobra, the serpent of stillness, awakening through inner power. If you were born in November, your energy carries a mystery few can explain, but everyone feels. It's not loud, it doesn't clamor for attention. Yet it leaves a lasting impression, like the quiet rumble of thunder just before the storm. You are the Cobra, not because of fear, but because of presence, purpose, power. You move with the quiet power of one who has mastered inner forces. There's something coiled deep within you, an ancient intelligence, a sacred knowing, a spiritual energy that doesn't rise until it's ready. It's the Kundalini, the creative fire. The dormant force that once awakened doesn't just elevate you, it transforms everything it touches. And in you, this energy pulses beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to strike, not to destroy, but to awaken. You were never meant for the shallow end of life. You've likely sensed there's more beneath it all from an early age. That which most people accept as truth is just the outer layer. You aren't satisfied with surface-level answers. You dig. You question, you feel into things that others are afraid to face. And because of that, you've become a guide not to comfort zones, but to thresholds. True awakening comes from embracing both light and shadow. You've walked through your shadows. Not to escape them, but to understand them. You know that real power isn't about denying the dark. It's about holding it close enough to transmute it. Your wounds have not made you weak, they've made you wise. Your fears have not frozen you, they've taught you how to move with intention, care, and precision. People may misread you at first. They may mistake your quiet for distance, your focus for detachment. But the truth is, you're simply tuned into a different frequency. You don't waste energy on the irrelevant. You protect your space like a temple. And those who enter it with respect discover just how deep and powerful your presence truly is. There's a meditation in your movements, a rhythm in handling conversations, even conflict. You don't react, you respond because you've trained yourself to pause, to breathe, to feel. And in that space between impulse and action, you find wisdom that many never learn to access. You were born to activate others, not by preaching, but by being. By standing in your truth, you permit others to face their own. You don't hand people their answers, you give them the silence in which their answers reveal themselves. In many ways, your journey is not about addition but subtraction, peeling away layers, shedding skins. Letting go of what's false so that what's real can rise. And each time you shed a former self, you don't mourn, you evolve, you get closer to your essence. And your essence, it's powerful beyond measure. You are both the guardian and the gatekeeper. You hold wisdom with reverence. You walk between dimensions, spiritual and physical, mystical and material, bridging them through your presence, through your willingness to dive where others flinch. So rise, serpent soul. Rise not in anger but in awareness. Rise not to conquer but to awaken. Because your energy is not here to dominate, it's here to initiate. And in doing so, you remind us that the most incredible power is not force, it's a transformation. December Bear. The quiet sentinel, stillness is your strength. If you were born in December, you are not the storm, but the shelter others run to when the storm arrives. There's a steadiness about you, a calm that isn't passive but earned. You are the bear, the ancient guardian of introspection, the quiet pillar whose power isn't loud but unmistakable. In a world that rushes, you choose to wait. In a world that speaks, you decide to listen. True power comes not from constant movement, but from knowing when to engage and withdraw. You've never been one to chase the spotlight or fill silence with noise. You've learned that there's clarity in retreat, strength in stillness. While some might mistake your calm for complacency, they don't realize you are conserving energy for the right moment. You move with purpose, not urgency. When you act, you do so with intention, measured, grounded, unshakable. You are the kind of person people seek out when their lives fall apart, not because you have all the answers, but because you don't pretend to. You listen, you hold space, you absorb chaos without becoming it. And that is a rare and powerful gift. Your wisdom is born in stillness and deep introspection. You've always had an inner world that runs deeper than most imagine. While others gather their identity from external validation, you find yours in reflection. In solitude, in the slow, deliberate work of knowing yourself, you don't react to life, you reflect on it. And in that reflection, you uncover insights that many miss. You don't leap, you observe. And in that observation, you find clarity that others never reach. You've likely had to learn patience the hard way, through seasons of waiting, watching, and holding on while everything changed. But through those winters of the soul, you've discovered that stillness is not stagnation, it's preparation. A gathering of strength, a sharpening of purpose, a hibernation not from the world but for the world. You aren't here to impress, you're here to embody. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard, your presence speaks enough. It says, I'm here, I'm grounded, and I know who I am. And that presence permits others to slow down, breathe, and come home to themselves. There's a quiet vigilance in you. A protectiveness that isn't aggressive but deeply rooted. You don't chase conflict if someone thunders like winter wind through pine, not to decide if someone you love is in danger but to defend. You remind people that it's okay to rest. That healing doesn't happen in chaos, it occurs in calm. You teach through example that we don't always need to do more, be more, or say more. Sometimes we just need to be, to sit, to feel, to honor the silence within us. Because in that silence, truth rises. You're not afraid of being alone. You understand that solitude doesn't mean isolation, it implies depth. You're not afraid of shadows because you know they're where the roots grow. And in being who you are, steady, observant, inwardly powerful, you help others reconnect with a part of themselves they've forgotten. The part that knows how to trust stillness, hear intuition, and walk without noise. So continue to move slowly, deliberately, unapologetically, because while others race ahead, your wisdom pads behind, shaping the future in silence. You don't need to find your spirit animal, you just need to remember who you are. What if this journey wasn't about discovering a spirit animal, but remembering the one already inside you? What if these animals weren't answers, but mirrors? Not destiny, but reminders, because the truth is, no month defines you, no symbol hands you purpose. The power never lived outside of you, it was waiting to be awakened from within. Maybe the real magic doesn't lie in what the tiger, the crane, or the snow leopard represent, but in how you show up today. Maybe your roar is waiting behind a silence you haven't dared to break. Maybe your stillness is the strength you've always misunderstood as weakness. Maybe your softness is your fiercest protection. And maybe, just maybe, the spirit animal is not what chooses you. It's what you choose to embody. You are not your birth month, you are not a label, you are not a type. You are a living soul, breathing through growth, loss, joy, confusion, clarity, and rebirth cycles. You are all these archetypes at once, fierce and gentle. Loud and quiet, light and shadow. Your soul doesn't fit a mold, it flows. So don't chase after a symbol. Instead, slow down, look in, breathe. Because right now, this very moment, you have the chance to awaken your sacred nature. To remember what stillness feels like, to move with purpose, to speak with the heart, to love with presence, and to live not defined by the stars, but guided by the truth that's already whispering from deep inside you. You are the story. You are the symbol, you are the soul, so don't ask what your spirit animal is. Ask instead, what part of me have I forgotten, and am I ready to remember it now?